Welcome to Brains, a podcast exploring the inner workings of our brains, mental health, and disabilities, and how film and television portray them. Hosted by me, film and television editor Sarah Taylor.
And by me, writer-director Heather Taylor. Before we begin, we want to acknowledge that the lands from which we recorded this podcast and from where you are listening are part of territories that have long served as a gathering place for diverse Indigenous peoples. And we are thankful, as guests on this land, to be able to live, work, and gather here together. We continue to learn about the history that came before us and its impact on the present, and encourage you to do the same.
We had the pleasure of interviewing writer-director Taratoa Stappard about Mārama, his first feature film. Mārama is a Māori gothic horror set in Victorian England in 1859 about a young Māori woman who is summoned from New Zealand to North Yorkshire, where she uncovers a horrific truth of her colonial heritage, and she must destroy the titled Englishman who has devastated her family.
Today's conversation dived into the inspiration for Mārama and how its themes of colonization, cultural theft, and reclamation are told through a Māori lens. We also discussed how important it was to weave cultural safety through every part of the making of Mārama, from development through to daily on-set practice, and how to preserve your mental health when working on films with sensitive subject matters.
A quick reminder to our listeners that this interview should not be taken as medical advice, and it is for informational purposes only. Because everyone's brain is different, please consult your healthcare professional if you have any questions. A content warning, we talk about trauma, death, and suicide. And now, Taratoa. Taratoa, thank you so much for joining us on Brains today.
Kia ora korua, thank you very much. Hello, both of you, and to everyone else, thanks very much for having me on your podcast.
Amazing.
All right. So I will start with the first question. Can you please tell us about yourself and what you do?
I am a writer-director, and I was born in Aotearoa, New Zealand, many, many moons ago. And I actually only lived there for the first couple of years of my life. My English father and my Māori mother and myself moved away then, and we moved around the world a lot, actually. My father was a fairly footloose kind of salesman, and we ended up living in the UK from New Zealand. We went to Australia, UK, America. I lived for 3 years in Middleton, Wisconsin, just outside of Madison. Between the second, third, for the second, third, and fourth grade, I was at the Salt Trail Elementary School. So yeah, I had a little bit of lived experience as a kid in the United States, and then we moved to Bavaria, where we lived for 4 years. I was at school in New Zealand for 2 years, and then since then, from the age of about 16, I've lived in the UK. So I guess I sound British. My boys were born and raised in London, where I now live, have done for 25 years. And yet I chose to make my first feature film about a young Māori woman. Mārama is a Māori gothic horror set in Victorian England, 1859, about a young Māori woman who is mysteriously summoned all the way from New Zealand to the other side of the world, North Yorkshire, and what she discovers within the first 3 days of her time there compels her to seek out and ultimately destroy the man responsible for killing her family. The main inspiration for, and perhaps reason why I even felt any sense of confidence or felt that I could even tell this story was I directly attribute it to my mother, who, as I say, is Māori and grew up with Māori parents in a Māori environment, in Te Ao Māori, in the Māori world. So she's acquainted with and understands Māori tanga, Māori customs, all the things that I really knew nothing about. And as we moved around the world, she would tell me and later on my younger sister stories about our tupuna, about our ancestors. And they were mostly the wahine Māori, the Māori women. Perhaps it's because it's my mother, who's a very strong character, that was telling these stories. But the stories around the women that we come from were most intriguing to me. And one in particular, there was a woman called Rangiriri Stru. Rangiriri means Rangi is sky and Riri is angry. So Angry Sky was her name. Interesting character. And she had an anglicized name, Eileen, but I like to think of her as Rangiriri. And Rangiriri had an identical twin, and her name was Te Rōrua. And what was interesting to me about the twins, at the age of 16, their English father, also interesting, English father, Māori mother perhaps, their English father, and this would have been they were born in 1880, so 1896, their English father disowned them because they'd been expelled from their third boarding school because it's not that they were misbehaving or headstrong, they were just young women who wanted to celebrate their own culture. And they had beautiful voices, they could sing, they wanted to do the Māori dances, sing the Māori waiata, but they were discouraged from doing that by the colonizing culture, really, of the time. Māori were being perceived as literally a dying race in the 1890s in Aotearoa, New Zealand, and that was intentional. Colonizers wanted to suppress and push Māori towards being more civilized, whatever, more colonial. And my great-grandmother and her identical twin refused to do that. They went off and they took on identical mokokowai, which are the traditional tattoos for women of mana. I've got a picture of them here. We still don't know which one is which, who's who, because they were identical. But wait, there's another one.
Oh, wow. These are beautiful images. Oh, my goodness.
And my great-grandmother went on, fast forward a couple of years, sort of 1910s, she went on to lead what was called a concert party, a troupe, if you like, of young Māori women, including my grandmother and my great-aunt, so her two daughters, which was called Princess Rangiriri and her 9 Māori Maidens. And she took that group from New Zealand through Australia. They performed in San Francisco, all the way to England, other side of the world. And, I wondered what must it have been like for my great-grandmother, a fairly staunch Māori woman with a very distinctive facial tattoo. What was it like for her to take a group of young Māori women to the other side of the world and basically perform and entertain and sing and dance for those people who had and still were colonizing her people at that time? That was an interesting concept to me. This was the group. And you can see her on this side.
Yeah.
That's Rangiriri. I think you can see 8 there, but there were 9 apparently. 9 Māori maidens. But yeah, that was intriguing to me. That, and I suppose the idea of identical twins, that's captivating notion. And perhaps most of all, because I had no lived experience in Aotearoa, New Zealand, certainly no real understanding of what it was to be Māori, I came up with this character who is an orphan, has been, she's summoned to the other side of the world, to England, where she finds out about her past. And maybe I was putting myself in her shoes a little bit about perhaps discovering more about one's identity, because even though it's a Māori Gothic horror about the horrors of colonization and cultural appropriation or theft, it's also fundamentally, I think, a story about identity and wanting to understand who you are and who you come from. I think that's a universal question. I don't know anyone that's not interested in knowing who they are and who they come from. So that was one of the main themes. And that's something that I've been not grappling with, but coming to understand a little bit more about. It's been a privilege to understand more about, if you like, half of my culture, if you're going to be colonial about it and think half this, half that. Well, really, to be Māori is to be Māori, is what I love about the culture. If you as Māori say, if you whakapapa Māori, which just means if you have a Māori lineage, then you are Māori. If you want to claim that, then you are. It's not about how much you are. It's funny, my mother's from that generation that speaks of, they're quarter Māori, or they're 1/8 Māori, or they're 1/16 Māori. That's out the window now. It's not about quantifying your percentage of Māoriness. It's you either are or you aren't. And I think that's a much more healthy approach to it. But
you wanted to make the film uncomfortable visually. It was also very beautiful. How do you think you achieved that while still allowing the audience to be, get that rush in the end and all that stuff?
I can speak to the references if that's useful. The cinematographer, brilliant cinematographer, Jin Lone, offered up. There was one film in particular that they said, we need to look at this together, I think, Taratoa, and it might inform the way we could shoot it, if you trust me, type thing. And I trust Jin implicitly, so I was interested. So we watched a film called The Wonder with Florence Pugh, set in 1859, funnily enough, as well. And it was all about the way the director had been very... the director and the cinematographer had been very intentional with the mise-en-scène. I mean, everyone's intentional with their mise-en-scène, of course they are, but quite static and slow and not at all cutty. And Jin's kind of 101 lesson in cinematography to me as a first-time feature director was, please, can we not overcover stuff? Can we not do 15 different angles for a fight? Trust me, let's just find the 3 key angles and it will be fine. Don't listen to anyone and people did say, coverage-wise, I think you need to get a few more angles. And it was like, Jin was staunch about it. They said, no, we don't. This is the way we are telling this story. And I've read a few reviews that are like, oh, it's a slow burn, and it's euphemisms for it's not very cutty. But that was definitely intentional. I thought, no, stick with it, and not stick with it, sit with it. And I wanted to make the audience sit with it. And if some people are uncomfortable, or if some people get a bit jumpy, or they want something faster, then that's on them. But my intention was to just sit the plan, I think, was for us to always try and be as close as possible as we could be to being in Mārama's head. And I think when you're in a character's head, you're not jump cutting around between 14 different setups. You're usually in one point of view. And that's, it's a rule of, it's not even, no, that's a generalization, but we were trying to keep it as personal to Mary/Mārama's point of view as possible as we were doing the coverage. And the other benefit of covering action like that, of course, is that you're being more efficient and allowing yourself. Jin's point was, I want to make sure if you trust me with what I'm going to offer you up for shots, which I did, they said, then you can spend the time with the actors, figuring stuff out or adjusting to, making tweaks. Jin's point was, if you roll up on the day with your shot list of 15 shots and your storyboard of 15 panels that we're going to have to tick off like on a commercial, it's boring for the actors. And they were right. That would have been boring for actors. It's much better, as we did, when we step onto a particular set for a particular scene for the first time, it's the first time the actors have been together in full costume and makeup and prosthetics possibly on that set. And of course they're going to have ideas, because actors are smart. If you cast correctly, actors are really smart. And they say, okay, I know you wrote that I'm sitting at this stage and I sort of stand up and go to the window, but I think I'm at the window already for the following reasons. And that happened a lot. And in shooting the way we did, it allowed us to be flexible and take those comments or feedbacks or sometimes straight offers on. And I think that it's super useful if you can do that with actors. It just brings them into the process more. And you're not moving them around like a piece of clay. And it's not human claymation. Yeah. Drop your chin a bit, look to the left a bit, or whatever. That's boring for an actor, I think.
It is.
Yeah, I imagine. I've never acted on film, but I can imagine it would be pretty frustrating to be told like that. So yeah, we tried to keep it as open as possible. And but stop me if I'm rambling. I should have mentioned straight up front, especially given the nature of your podcast. Nearly a year ago, on May the 1st last year, I was in a car crash. And so I have a what's called a TBI, a traumatic brain injury, which you know what that is. And one of the things that I was told as I was recovering from my TBI over 5 weeks in residential rehab in New Zealand, where it happened, was you're going to find over the next few years you're going to be much more verbose than you ever were, Taratoa. And I was like, oh, okay. And my wife was like, what? More verbose? And it's true. It's a thing. Okay. When you have a TBI or an ABI, traumatic brain injury or acquired brain injury, mine was traumatic. It was a car crash. Yeah. I found myself just going on at length. So anyway, feel free to interrupt me and stop me.
So I have ADHD and I also am verbose. So Sarah often has to stop me, and we do cut out things that I talk about. I feel like you are telling us even so much more than what we had set to ask, because we don't know all the things that you've experienced during the making of it. And it's wonderful to hear about the process of like trusting the people with you and like being able to use people, not use people, but allow people to have their talent shine, whether they're on the screen or behind the screen. So thank you for giving us that detail.
No, absolutely. And maybe a slightly different level, but we knew, because of the very taboo nature of the story. I mean, first and foremost, and this was the distributor's suggestion, which I think was a good one. We put up what could probably be called a cultural trigger warning at the beginning of the film. But that wasn't my idea. That was the distributors, and they were being basically a little bit careful. But actually, it's good. I think it sort of sets the tone for the film and makes people lean in a slightly different way, perhaps, than if we just gone straight to the first image. So it just sort of settles you. You read it and you take it in, and then you think, oh, and I guess that's Māori above it if you've never seen Māori before. So, okay, I'm in the right headspace, and then the film starts. But I mention all this because we were also absolutely determined to make things as authentic as possible. to make the portrayal of the culture, of the Māori culture and anything historic as appropriate, but also authentic as possible, down to the accent that was used for the pronunciation of a particular karakia as spoken, a prayer as spoken by that particular character, so that anyone who knows the language, Māori language, would know that immediately, she comes from that area. Or, those were things, and that area, why? Because backstory-wise, I had worked out in my head that's where she comes from, and those are all important things to know. And to give sort of stewardship or guardianship to that, we had two excellent, I think they're down as Māori content producers, Ngāhuia and Paraone, two very highly respected Māori specialists, and they would advise on everything, like I say, from the reo, from the language, down to perhaps the choreography of Mārama's pivotal haka. All those things were very carefully researched and controlled, and also bringing it back to the crew and the cast, the health, the mental health, the wairua, the spiritual health of the cast and crew. We would start the day with a karakia, a prayer, just to open the space and cleanse it. And then we would close the day again with a prayer to take us all out safely into the night and back up, especially the cast, but actually the crew as well. We had a lot of, because we shot in New Zealand, I was able to work with a lot of Māori crew, which was great. And even write in a few extra Māori characters, which again was great. So it worked out in our favor, I think, that we were able to shoot everything in New Zealand. Yes, it's a story that takes place in Victorian England, but because the financing came from New Zealand, we ended up shooting there and doing all the post-production there. And it was great. It was great, really. I'm so glad it worked out that way.
I have so many questions that I want to branch off from this thing you just said, but I'm going to stick with the mental health for a second. I love that you really protected, that your cultural safety was woven through every part of your film. We're talking about like what happened on set, but how did you protect your mental health and those of your team in the development process, like when it was you writing? And then also in that edit process, because there's a lot of stuff that I imagine is being brought up on screen that you are going through. Like, how are you opening and closing your day? How are you helping your mental health during those moments?
I wish I could say I had, the following strategy, etc. But honestly, and probably this is the same for anyone that is lucky enough to find themselves in a position where they're in pre-production for, and then shooting, and then editing their first feature film, it was just so massively overwhelming in an exciting way that I barely stopped to think about, like, how am I doing? How's my mental health doing? I really didn't. I was just powering because there's 50, as you know, when you're making films, there's a lot of questions that get thrown at you. And when you're doing something like a period gothic horror, there's all kinds of questions that I'd never thought I'd have to have answers for, I won't even bring any examples up because they're all spoiler alerts, but they're things that you've got to think about because you need to give every department an answer. And so I guess I'm saying the experience was so overwhelming in an exciting and brilliant way that I didn't really have much time to worry about my mental health. And I'm not being flip about it, but it wasn't an issue until I had a car crash and we were 3 weeks away from completing the film. The post-production was so nearly done, but that changed everything. And my editor, thank God, stepped in and became my eyes and ears for the final grade, eyes, and for the final sound mix, ears. And all I had to do 5 weeks later, once I could kind of get out of my bed, was go along and listen to the final mix and watch the final grade. And of course, it was massively emotional and overwhelming and better than anything I'd expected. But from there, my recovery from the injury and from the car crash that I'd been in, I'm blind in one eye now as well. That's a real bummer, but anyway, I'm learning to live with that. Overall, I'm very lucky. My friend who was driving was killed in the crash immediately, and that was a lot for my head as well. But I remember, and my family tell me that I was obsessed with promoting the film and getting it into the right festival, and they were like, He doesn't know what he's talking about. He needs to recover. And I was like, no, we need to get the application in for Venice, or we need to get the submission in for Toronto. And because my head was there, and I actually think it pulled me through and towards some form of recovery. I'll never know, but perhaps a bit quicker than otherwise, because I had this thing to focus on. But at the earlier stage, in terms of, to answer your question, sorry, about How did I protect myself? Actually, I did a lot of crying, a lot of crying, and I'm a big crier. And I was away in New Zealand. I live in London. My wife and my boys are in London, so I was away from my family. But I made lots of great friends in my little flat in Auckland, and I was able to connect with them and speak with them. But one of them, my best friend, is the guy that was killed then in the crash. So at the initial time, Andrew and I had a great relationship. We were able to hang out, and just in terms of crying, yeah, I just opened myself up to it. And I'm not meaning to just drop these things in because in a sort of a cavalier way, but the film is dedicated to my sister, who ended her life 4.5 years ago. So, as I was preparing the film and as I was finalizing the draft, there were so many times that I would think of Marati and think of how we would have been able to talk about what I was doing. And she had lived experience in Aotearoa, New Zealand, more than me, actually. And I would have loved to have been able to share those things with her. So a lot of it was sad, but then also just kept thinking, oh, well, maybe she's keeping an eye on me because stuff's going really well. But the bottom line is I'm open to emotion, massively open. So I've had enough grief in my life that I know if you try and lock it out, you're going to damage yourself. Been through a lot of grief trauma in my life, either personal or shared with my wife. And it's important to let it out and to share it. Maybe some people would say I overshare sometimes. I don't care. It's what I need to do. They can walk away.
You're in good company.
We're in good company. Yeah, we are oversharers. I'm crying right now.
Yeah, we're both crying right now.
I'm just crying. It's fine.
Like I say, my sister ended her life 4.5 years ago now, but there was one thing that I knew that I wanted to do with the feature, and that was to go out using the voice of someone very important to me who'd effectively inspired the film. And over the final credits, there is what's called a maimai, a lament, which a Māori song of bereavement to honor the dead. And it's called rimu rimu, this particular maimai, and it's about rimu rimu, meaning the seaweed as it is on the surface of the water. And it's literally was written in 1960 by a mother who was mourning the loss of her daughter, I believe, other members of the family possibly also, but particularly her daughter, and wondering whether or not her daughter's spirit was like this seaweed that she was observing on the surface of the water, or whether her spirit had found her way to rest and peace. And Rimu Rimu is sung twice over the final credits. Once, first time by Ariana Tikau, a contemporary Māori performer, and then the second time by the woman who informed and gave me the confidence, my mother. So my mother was an opera singer, and she was a great opera singer, actually, until I was born, and then my dad had other ideas for her, like bring up your son, so whatever. That was the end of her career, I'm afraid. But she was the first Māori to sing a lead with the New Zealand Opera Company. She sang Carmen. But she also recorded 2 albums, which are on Spotify, of traditional Māori waiata, or songs. And I knew I wanted to include this particular song. So I like to think that maybe those lyrics are some of the first things I heard, because when she recorded it, she was hapu, pregnant with me. And yeah, whenever I hear that, her voice over the credits, that's a nice way to end the film.
Oh, that's beautiful. Heather's embracing.
I'm just going to cry over here by myself. It's okay.
Oh, it's so beautiful. But this is your first feature, but clearly, and you've put so much, you have so much thought, and you've put so much love and heart into what you're putting on screen. What has led you to do that? To know, like, what you're putting out in the world has this kind of meaning, because it is very, very touching.
Gosh, I don't know. Maybe it's not about trying to honor her, but maybe I am thinking a lot about my sister Marati, and other people that I've lost in my life, and now more recently my friend Andrew, who died in the car crash. That was like, oh, come on. But no, as I say, our families suffered a fair amount of emotional trauma, like many families have or do every day. And I'm not saying it was a coping mechanism, but I suppose I just was open to feeling the feels, and the script became full of moments where you feel the feels. And I just leaned into that. I was happy to go with it. And frankly, those are the kind of stories that I think I want to continue telling, because there's nothing more affirming or, I was saying satisfying, like it was something that I was intending to do, but it is satisfying actually when you sense an audience having a communal response, even if it's perhaps triggered grief, or literally people saying, "I cried during that. You made me cry," and I'm like, "Well, okay, that's okay, isn't it?" And that's what I would like to continue doing. I don't know if I'd be much good at, for example, directing a comedy. I'm not. It's really hard to direct comedy, I imagine, but I don't think that's going to be my jam ever. And it's not the stories. It's not the stories that I have lined up to hopefully do. I have more stories lined up, all of which, well, the two of them are kind of part 2 and 3 of a trilogy that I posited for Mārama. The second part, which is getting there treatment-wise, is called Anahira, based on the young girl and 10 years in the future, and where's she at, and where are Peggy and Mārama at? Let's see. No spoiler alerts. And then the other 2 are a bit different, but one of them is, again, very personal because it's about my mother's experience as a Māori opera singer in 1979 in Vienna.
Well, I can't wait to watch everything you're making.
Yeah,
Can you just make them immediately?
We'll keep on watching.
Okay, well, speaking of haka, there's so many powerful scenes in this film, but one of the kind of most pivotal scenes is that point where Mārama is confronting Jack Fenton. It's kind of felt like this head-on confrontation with colonialism and cultural appropriation. And she just like sets herself and saying, "This is who I am." How did you prepare for that scene? And what was the impact of filming it and then seeing it on screen afterwards?
Well, that scene, and I don't think it's a massive spoiler alert. I mean, if you've seen the film, it's better. But if you haven't, you could always turn off this bit. But there is a scene where, yes, Mary, takes on her identity as Mārama, and she's confronting the worst kind of colonizing racism / disrespect, cultural destruction, perhaps. I can't think of a better way to put it, in a party scene. And her response is, the only thing she can do is explode with this confrontational response in the form of a haka, which, if you don't know what a haka is, some people think of it as a war dance. It's not just that. A haka can also be something celebratory, but it's mainly really a way of, I think it's an expression of power and of mana. And she speaks of mana as well. And mana, Mārama in the film talks about mana as being its standing, its respect, and its power. You know, to have that mana in you. So it's an expression of one's mana, a haka. And in this particular instance, it's her expression of disgust at what she's witnessed from these people. But that party scene was always scheduled for 2 days because that's all we could afford the full 30 extras for. And there was a lot of pressure because it was like, this, you don't go late on this because we can't afford to go late. You know, every hour you go over is 1 day dropped. And it's like, okay, we're not going to go over time. So we knew that it had to be tight, and we shot it. I scheduled it with Jin and everyone else intentionally so that we were working towards the final riposte that she offers up, which is that she throws down, not offers up, which is the haka. But really, it wasn't for me at all to tell Ariana how to do that haka. It's not my warehouse, not my lane. So she choreographed that with Ngāhuia, the female cultural consultant, quite closely. Everything, the pronunciation, the delivery, and the choreography especially. And when it came to it, I had it set up as a single shot. Everyone knew this is a single shot. Camera's not going anywhere. You're working within these parameters. You know, when you're ready, go. And she did the first take, and it was perfect. And I was weeping, and it's like saying, I have no notes. I don't know what to say. It's amazing because it was the first time I'd seen her do it. I'd seen her audition of different hakas, but not the haka that we had composed especially for this film, from a previous short that we'd used for this feature. So seeing the way she did it just had me in tears. And I said, that's fine for me. I'm not beyond fine, it's amazing for me. Is there anything you want to do? And she just looked over at Ngāhuia, who kind of beckoned her over, and she went over and they had a little huddle for like 5 seconds, it seems. And Ariana turned around and came back and went, "I'll just go one more time, please." I was like, do I change anything? Do you want something different? No, I'm ready to go. One more time. So we quickly, everything ready, go, action. And she did the haka again. And it was even better. And it was just great. So at the end there, anything else? She looked over at Ngāhui again. Thumbs up. Fine, we wrapped. And it was exhaustion. I went over to Ngāhui, of course. Everyone's wrapping up and leaving. And Ariana went for a lie down, I think. But I went over to Ngāhui and I had to ask her. I was like, what the heck did you tell her? Because I don't know what happened, but it was even better in the second take. And she said, nothing major. I just reminded her to weaponize her dress. And I was like, what? What do you? And she went, just look at both the takes. You'll see what I mean. And she went off. I was like, okay. And of course, I stared at those takes, both of them, repeatedly for a long time. And she was bang on. In the first take, Ariana didn't touch her dress at all. She did an amazing haka, but it was perhaps more formal. In the second take, she uses the dress, she grabs it and slaps her thighs with the dress, almost like wielding it like a club. And when I showed my mother that, she knew exactly what the consultant and Ariana were doing there, because my mother remembered from being on meeting houses with her family. Her point, she said, as a young girl, it always slightly annoyed me that it was the Māori men, when they were speaking, that got that were able to hold the special artifacts like a staff or a club, and whereas the women weren't really ever offered anything. If they were allowed to speak, they just were told to stand up and speak. And what Mum said, she remembers vividly what some of the kuia, the elderly women or grandmothers, would do is grab a handful of the the reed skirt that they have and slap their thighs with it to make their point. And that's what Ariana was doing on Ngāhui's suggestion with her red dress. And that's never something that I would have thought to do, but that's what you get when you work closely with a cultural consultant in this case, or with an expert. You just get these things that make it so much better than it could have ever been. From my one line in my script, Mārama performs a astounding haka. Well, that's open to interpretation, and they developed it, they brought it, and then they specified it. And best of all, Ngāhui killed it with that extra note. Just remember to weaponize your dress.
That's brilliant. Now, have you had any feedback of other folks watching that scene?
I guess the main one for me was my mum. And I love the fact that she immediately got it. She wasn't even fazed by it. She was like, no, that was good. I like that. I knew what she was doing, she said. And I was like, well, I wouldn't have known it. And I certainly didn't ask her to do it. But other feedback, well, I suppose the main thing that happens, and it's perfectly valid, and it happens a lot, actually. If you just Google in haka, and watch some of the hakas that are performed, I mean, the All Blacks, the national rugby team comes up. That's one type of haka, yes. But there's, like I said, there's many different levels of haka. And the one thing that unifies most of them, in my experience, if they're done well, is they're incredibly emotional and emotionally provoking, perhaps, provocative. And a lot of people tell me, oh my God, I cried through that. And I don't know why I was crying, but I was crying. And I said, that's fine. That happens. And funnier still, at some of these genre festivals I've been to, or two in particular, Sitges and Brussels, what happened there, because you get this kind of crowd feedback in the real genre festivals, and they clap when someone's killed, or in Brussels it's even more intense. But wow, in Brussels during my screening, they were silent, and I was told that's a sign of respect. They're emotionally involved until the end of the haka, and the whole place, almost like a cathartic release, whooping and hollering, woo-hoo! And clapping and cheering, until we do what we do in the film and flip to see the awful audience within the film clapping her, and then it went quiet. And some people afterwards came out and said to me in Brussels, I felt so bad, I'm so sorry, I was clapping at the wrong time, I was colonizing your film. And I was like, no, I'm sure I think you were clapping from a position of good faith, not like in the film. It's just been interesting watching it with different audiences.
It struck me was the institutionalization of Amelia when she wouldn't assimilate. And this idea that this makes me emotional, sorry, that someone willful, in quotations, willful, would be categorized as mentally ill and institutionalized. So why was it important for you to include this specific detail in the film?
Without going into huge detail, perhaps because of some of the people that have been close to me in my life who have been through mental health illness and how it's affected them, even in the 2020s. So once I looked into it, oh my God, in the middle 1800s, are you kidding? It was horrific. The the casual abuse and the writing off of people into literally Bedlam type asylums. And what it was, I was researching at one stage, and I came across around the period, and I came across a bundle of pseudo-scientific photographs, because I think I was researching into when would the photographs, is it credible for me to have this photograph that plays a part in the film? Yes, it was. It was still a little bit unusual, but then again, Cole is a man of means, so he would have been able to afford having the photograph, etc. Anyway, looking around photographs and asylums and of that period, I came across this fascinating study, or horrific study, of photography had just become a thing, and some bright spark had the idea of taking photographs of asylum inmates and then going back a year later and taking photographs of them again in order to prove or disprove, mostly to prove really, because they were trying to prove their own brilliance, how that person had improved. Like you could take a photo of someone and not classify and quantify their mental health improvement or not. It was clearly ridiculous, but that spoke to me about the sort of thing that maybe Amelia had been through. But character-wise, again, it did not at all seem incredible that someone like Cole could have just pushed her off into an asylum, and under the guise of her being, as you say, willful or difficult. She asked too many questions, or she pushed back one too many times, and it's fine. She needs to be locked up. There were lots and lots and lots of instances of women being silenced in those times by just being lost in asylums. It felt like it was more than a trope, more than a literature trope. It was more I looked into it, there were lots of instances of that happening. It's horrific.
Yeah, the fact that they thought that you would heal women by giving them a hysterectomy because that's where the hysteria comes from.
Yes.
Like how women were silenced so often. And I think that to me was just such an impactful moment because it is so true to history, but also was so reflective of what was happening in that household.
Yeah.
And like the role that women were playing, and then it gave so much more power to, I think, your lead character. So I just think that was actually such an important moment that captured, again, like your historical accuracy, but also really fed into the world of your story and then the power your characters then gained after that.
Thank you.
So you told this story, the Gothic lens, it's a Māori story, but it's about reclaimation. So why is it important for you to tell these stories?
I just had a hunger to tell a story that was involving, that was emotional, and it started to unfold itself. Honestly, it wasn't strategic or intentional. It just started to kind of lay itself out. And I do remember earlier drafts being super plotty and lots of plot and lots of this explaining that and lots of and that's what you do with great script development editors, is you pull back on stuff and you get rid of extraneous exposition, I guess. And we always had this kind of litmus test of, are you making a documentary or are you making a drama? Are you trying to explain the history of a particular thing, or are you just going to let audiences be confused? Because some will be, but that's okay. Not confused, hopefully, but just leave them without an understanding of a particular cultural practice. Well, that's all right, because the purpose of this film is not to explain the long history of Māori reverence. The head is the most taboo area of the body, and heads of chiefs, of great warriors, were taken, preserved, and brought out and revered by that particular tribe on that particular individual's birthday. That's something that's gone way back in history, but I didn't need to start telling that story. Anyone could look it up and figure it out. And so there were reasons for what's happening in the film, but I guess we just stripped back on it. And I hope that's it. What is it, 89 minutes in the end? It's actually been quite gratifying reading letterbox reviews, which I do to a lot, far too much. But anyway, I can't help myself. I read all the letterbox reviews.
It's hard not to.
Well, anyone who says they don't is lying, I think. But anyway, especially on the first feature. Maybe I won't as much on the second feature if I get to make my second feature. But anyway, I read them all, and some people, anyway, quite a few people have said it's very short, and I really wish I knew more about da-da-da, or I'd like to know more about that. And I figure, well, that's a better way of leaving an audience than Jesus, it dragged on and I get it already. I don't need to, it's like, okay, we wanted to make it sharp and we wanted to make it short and we worked hard on that as we were developing the script. How much can we pull out? How much can we pull out? And then again, when we were editing, of course, you write it, you shoot it, and then you edit it, 3 different processes. And when we were editing, there was a lot of pulling out and a lot of reduction and discovering that we don't need that entire scene. Look, it's better without it. It's all 101 stuff, I'm sure, to experienced writers and directors, but as a first feature, to me, it was incredible how much you can get away with losing stuff that you've spent 4 years crafting and perfecting, and then you shoot it, and the performances are great and stuff. But in the end, it boils down to, we don't need that scene.
I will say that to those people who on Letterboxd, if you're listening, if you are curious about something hopefully that this film made you curious, then go research it. Yeah. Go look at the history. Look at there's lots of documentation of stories and what happened. Like, this is a perfect opportunity for you to learn more, right? Yeah. And I think that's what I loved about the film, is that it did not explain everything, but you knew what you needed to know, and then it gave you a feeling of something, and that to me is the most important. And
good.
That's all that I needed to know.
I mean, I guess I'm just holding my hand up and admitting that I was nervous and I had a lot of explanation in earlier drafts, and probably even in scenes, but that certainly a lot of the exposition was cut before we even shot it. But then even once we shot some of the stuff, it was like, we don't need him to say the da-da-da-da-da-da. Just leave it. And either people will get it or they won't. And it doesn't really matter. If they're interested enough, like you say, they just go online for 10 minutes and figure it out.
You've already hinted a little bit on what's next for you. Can you tell us what is next for your film, for Mārama? Like, what's next? And also, is there anything else that you didn't share already that you'd like to share about what you're working on?
Oh, for the film? Well, there's about another 5, I think, festivals. After New York, where I am at the moment, we're opening, obviously, in 15 states. So, yes, across the states on Friday and next week, which is amazing. So anyone that wants to go and see that, please, māramafilm.com, really easy to remember. Māramafilm.com has all the times and places and cinemas, and it's important that we get people into those cinemas in the first week, as everyone I'm sure is aware, because otherwise it gets ripped off, or taken out of those cinemas. But if we can get attract some good bums on seats, that'd be great in the opening weekend. Then I go on Sunday to Paris, because on Wednesday the 22nd it opens in 65 cinemas around France, and that is bottom line down to the fact that the French government believes in funding the arts with public money. So, they are supporting the distributors in France. Thank you, France, exactly. And then I go to, in a week and a half's time, to Munich for the German premiere. And then I think this month I'm going to try and draw a line under it, because otherwise you can just sort of troop around the world forever with a film if it gets a certain traction, which Mārama thankfully has. And I'm absolutely not complaining. It's been amazing, but I do need to get back to the next project. And on that, I have a 12-year plan.
I love this.
I have 4 projects. I want to make a film every 3 years, because this film took me just over 5 years from finishing first draft to wrapping. And I'm told the average is 7 years. So we were just under average, which is good. Average for a first feature. But I'm hoping not to spend another 5 years on my second. I don't want to do that. And the four films I have, 12-year plan. I was pitching this to a producer the other day, and they said, I like that 12. They were like, if you'd said 15, I'd have said that's ridiculous. And if you said 10, I would have said that sounds like something out of a management manual. So good, stick with the 12-year.
I love that.
Yeah, good, 12. It's a good number, 12-year plan. 4 more features, that would make me happy. Well, really, another feature would make me happy in the first instance, but and that's ready to go, and hopefully shooting January, February in the Kingdom of Eswatini, which used to be known as Swaziland, and Mozambique.
Oh, well, I'm excited to continue to watch your career in their next 12 years. I look forward to
me too.
your 4 films coming. And is there anywhere other than your film website? Is there a place that people can follow along you and your journey?
Oh, I'm a bit rubbish on social media, but I do at least try and do Instagram. And you can follow me on Instagram at Toa Stappard, one word. Toa Stappard, my surname, one word. Because my name is Taratoa, but I've only really reclaimed my full name since making Mārama and the short film before for it. Because almost all my friends in the UK know me as Toa, which is a shortened version of Taratoa. Anyway, that's hence at Toa Stappard on Instagram. And I put anything about film and Mārama and Mārama's journey. It's all up there. So yeah, please follow along.
Before we wrap up, is there anything else that you'd want to say that we didn't ask you, or any last words of advice for those out there making films and, trying to do things that maybe are hard to make emotionally and beyond? Like, any words of advice?
I don't want it to be glib at all, but I will say, no matter what your film is, if you're looking to make a first feature, I have to say, it took me a long time to realize this, because I was attached to various other feature projects over the years, and they didn't go anywhere. Why? Not because the scripts were no good, because they were, but because I was untested, and they ended up using a director who was tested. So if you're looking to make your first feature, I'm afraid the bottom line is you better write that script yourself. Like, I think it's so much easier to, or should we just say possible even these days, to get a project off the ground as a writer-director than it is as a first-time director. That's just facts. Unless you happen to be that unicorn director that's won Cannes with your short film, or you've made music videos for the last 10 years that are all great. That's good for you, but there's not many people like that. If you really want to make a feature film, please just get into writing. I wished I'd started writing much earlier in my life, but at least, Mārama was my first script, so at least I finally sat down and wrote a script.
That is an achievement. Congratulations.
It's a very big achievement. So congratulations.
Thank you. Thanks so much. What a pleasure to chat with you both. Kia kite. Have a great day.
Thank you. Bye.
You too.
Bye.
It's nice to see your face, and everybody else can see our face, because now we're going to try to do video.
Yes. It's not that we didn't want you to see our faces. It's just we are lean towards perfectionism. And sometimes that can take a long time. And so I think it's just about, it's always good to embrace new things. Mm-hmm. And I think and also, like, Taratoa had so many beautiful pictures of his family. We're like, well, if we're going to try video, we should definitely do this one. So I actually was not prepared for this initially. I was still in my pajamas. So I have brushed my hair, which is nice, and put on a different t-shirt.
And I love that Heather is 2 hours ahead of me in the world. And she was still in her pajamas.
I was working because I was like,
teasing.
I was like, oh, I'll do this, and then I'll have a shower and get ready, because I'm doing a session for something I'm part of. I'm part of something called the 1 in 4 Coalition Writers Mentorship Program. And so we're talking with some executives from a big, I don't know what I'm allowed to say or not allowed to say, but anyways, from a big company, from a big, maybe romance series that people may know about. So I'm just going to put that out there, and it doesn't have hockey in it.
Oh,
it's the other one.
Oh, I don't even know what it is, but anyway.
It's set it past. You know what I'm talking about.
I do.
Yes. Anyways. But I'm going to say, okay, I'm so happy we got to do this interview. We had originally wanted to talk during TIFF, and it didn't work out, but I think this worked out just so much better because it's also shepherding this, like, films being shepherded into being like a theatrical release, and having so much more life and much more access for people to go see it, which I'm really so happy for.
Yeah. So go out there. It's out now. Go watch it at your local theater. Hopefully it's playing in your city, and enjoy. It's beautiful. And if you've listened or come back and listen, and then the meanings, extra meaning to all of these little, these very important details that they put in the film. I loved every minute of this interview.
Now I'm going to do a shout out that I don't normally do. I'm going to shout out Stacey Kuzak from Sapcar PR, which we don't normally shout out the PR people, though there's other there's great people that we love too. There's some really great PR people out there who are out there getting films like this to be seen by so many people. And I'm just going to say, like, I have never seen a document like the document that I received as the, essentially, like, I think like the electronic press kit, EPK. It is not only like, this press kit is how many pages long? It is like 51 pages long.
Wow.
Now you're going to say that's a lot.
Not for Heather.
No, not for me. I spent 2 hours reading it and finding additional questions based on this document. But what was amazing is that it covered the bios of a lot of the people who were involved in making the film, but also then an essay, essentially like a 1 to 2 page thing about their feelings of different topics. So they had things like, it was just so cool. So you have things like you have the key casting crew, but you have like From Page to Screen, The Origins and History by Taratoa Stappard. And then you have like exploring, it's like a haunting lens on cultural theft and identity. And I'm just like,
so everything in there is like a little nugget of even more joy.
Yeah, there's so much
information. Yeah.
So if you're interviewing any of these people for any of these areas, like costumes and designs, they have like weaving Gothic elegance into Mārama. I'm like, this is like, I've never seen so much detail. So I'm assuming this is come from the PR side or whomever did this. Thank you. I just think like this is its own little mini book. I think these essays should be on their film website.
Yeah, that's
like,
cool.
I just think they're beautiful. So just shout out to whoever collected all of that and made this. Thank you. And it's been fantastic. I love when we get all of this stuff and more than what we expected. So thank you everyone for doing a really good job.
Yay. Good job, team. Good job. So Heather, what's been happening? It's been a while since we've sat down here and chatted.
A film that I co-wrote, A Little Park Music, came out at Hallmark.
Yeah.
Which is really fun.
That's my dream one day to edit. Maybe one day you can write it and I can edit it. That would be so cool.
These are all achievable dreams, I believe. And then Sarah and I are both going to Banff World Media Festival in June. We're going to interview a bunch of people who are creators and working in the disabled space. And I'm going to be going as part of the Disability Screen Office delegation, which I'm so excited about. And and it's nice that Sarah and I get to both be there at the same time. And then also, I think record something in a festival in a way that we not normally recorded it. So really doing more soundbite type interviews with people versus our normal 1 hour long in-depth interview, which I love. But I think there's an opportunity again to continue to explore different ways to tell stories. And I used to do a lot of these kind of like streeters. I'm saying because that's what you go on the street, interview people, which is terrifying. The worst thing you could ever
I used
do.
to also do this in my early career days.
Yeah,
but when you're talking about something that's like meaningful and important, like you get over that energy of nerves and you just do it.
And like the stuff that I was doing streeters on like what online payment systems you use. It's not the same as like, what is this thing that you dreamed of making for so long?
Yeah.
And
how do you feel?
That you want to change the point of view of people and how people think about disabilities and mental health. Like, I think it's a little different.
I'm going to Banff also to bring my documentary that I'm like this close to picture locking. It's like we're almost there. Invisible Imagination. Just to sell it. Get more people to watch it.
And also to set up what's next.
Exactly, which I have a few fun ideas in the works, which I'm excited to share with the world eventually. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to this next stage of the filmmaking process. Like I've obviously been in post-production for many a film as an editor, and I do get to go to see things. Like we got to go to South by Southwest for the film ceremony, and Heather graciously came and helped do streeters. But I don't always get, like, I've never gotten to be like the filmmaker who is bringing a film somewhere. So I'm excited and nervous, but mostly very excited to see where my film will go and what people will take from it. And I hope the small group of people that I've had watch it just to test it, I've had some really great responses from folks who have aphantasia, and it is doing exactly what I wanted it to do. And that makes me feel so good. So I'm like, you work so hard. And Taratoa said it in the interview where you're like, you're just answering a question, doing the thing, getting things moving. You don't always get to pause to be like, how am I, like, what's happening for me? And I'm at this space where it's not done because I still have to go through, color grading, sound design, composition. Like there's many a step still. but I'm able to rest a little. And I see like I've learned a lot. I've grown into a different human by going through this process, and it's pretty impactful. And I need to allow myself to be grateful for those moments and to like sit in this space and feel the accomplishment that me and my team have made, because it's pretty awesome.
Yeah. And we talk about this. We talked about this. Taratoa talked about this, that we make 3 different films. Mm-hmm. And I think we really have to celebrate along every step of the way of saying, I made this part of the film. Mm-hmm. I made this part of the film. And then finding the joy in the, like, what's the next thing to uncover here? Mm-hmm. And it's not always what you think it will be, or you think you'll learn, or you think that will be impactful until you get to be in that moment.
Exactly. Well, on that note, thank you for listening to today's episode of Brains. Brains is hosted and produced by Heather and Sarah Taylor, and our theme song is by our little brother Depish. Here's a photo of him.
Oh, if you like what you hear, please rate and review us and tell your friends to tune in. You can reach us on Instagram, TikTok, or Threads at Brains Podcast, spelled BRAAINS Podcast. You can also visit our website, brainspodcast.com, or we're trying out Substack, so brainspodcast.substack.com. If you want to get it in your inbox whenever we have a new episode. And you can contact us and subscribe and learn a little bit more about who we are and what we do. Until next time, I'm your host, Heather.
And I'm your host, Sarah.
Bye.